The next question will be that when did you encounter the contextual approach and how did it affect you?
So I got my master's in psychology and I got licensed as a marriage and family therapist here quite a long time ago, actually, really long time ago. And then I worked as a as a therapist, as a clinical supervisor, as a clinical director, regional director at many different agencies. And then so I have a family, I have a daughter. And so about 3.5 years ago, I always wanted to so because I didn't really spend college years really studying, although I was a very studious person, I didn't really study much, because it was not my focus. I was not interested in it, right? But then because of that, that need or that desire, I always had it in me that I always want to get involved in a little bit of research, but really getting into doctoral program and just getting that getting that degree for myself. So then 3.5 years ago, or 4 years ago, I decided I'm gonna go back to school and just get a doctoral degree, right? So that's how I met Tatiana about 4 years ago, and I never heard of contextual therapy until I met Tatiana. So she was mentioning that in a quantitative research class. But because I've been working in this field for a long time, I was surprised I never heard of contextual therapy. So I inquired more about it. And then I read more about it. And then in another class, contextual therapy was introduced as a part of a few other family systems theories. So when I read about it, first it was very intriguing. And then the more I read about it, it just made a lot of sense. And I just thought it was very integrative and beautiful therapy, beautiful theory in some ways, right? So it was more, I thought it brought together the relationship emphasis along with contextual emphasis, right? Because we cannot see individual life, but also our each relationship outside of any context, right? So I thought it just laid out that foundational, maybe the principles really well, right? In a way that made it easier to kind of conceptualize what I see in my life or in my client's life. And so I really appreciated that. I really appreciated that there was a relational ethics that was really emphasized, which I never heard of that before, or in other theories. And I think that really matters. It doesn't matter what theory people use, but I think relational ethics does play a role. And if we don't understand it, then it's gonna come out in different ways, and not really addressing it either. Because if you don't understand it that way, then you're gonna just treat individuals' depression and anxiety and low self-esteem without talking about anything else, when it could be actually coming from that relational ethics that was never healed, right? So I think in that regard, so I think it was more I got interested in that.
And did it affect you also, like in your personal life when
So then, because I got interested in it, so I think when I get interested in something, I really get interested in something, like the way I got involved in student activism. And there was, after I became a therapist, I was heavily influenced by narrative therapy. So for narrative therapy, David Epstein and Michael White, I went to their workshops. I went to Canada to get to take their training or workshops. And so I was very influenced by narrative therapy, which I still do use. So when I got very interested in contextual, I it's not more like it's not like an intentional decision, but I was always thinking about from that framework, or when there's opportunity to write papers, um, I would always choose to use contextual therapy to do that. For my doctoral exam, I chose contextual therapy to present and also do a case presentation from that perspective. For my dissertation, I chose contextual therapy, right, to analyze or to really look at my qualitative research through that lens. So it did influence me in that regard. And because I had to write doctoral exam and dissertation papers using contextual therapy, I included a lot of my own life reflection from that contextual therapy as well. So I had a very also personal and professional time, maybe at least a couple of years, just thinking about contextual therapy, and I actually wrote about it.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Please talk about the topic of representation.
So really briefly, it was dissertation was on qualitative research. It was a phenomenological study where I interviewed 8 young Asian American adults living in Sacramento. And I was just interviewing them through Zoom one by one, just asking questions about their early experience of having been parentified. So my subject is on parentification. So I only chose those participants who said yes to, yes, I was parentified. So I chose those participants and had interviews. So I'll be talking about young Asian American adults' experience of having been parentified when they were growing up. And I'll be talking about that from contextual therapy and therapy lens, and then I'll be adding a little bit of acculturation and cultural perspective on top of that.
Thank you. Do you have a personal family involvement in the topic? You spoke a lot about your family experiences and you share your personal life very openly. Could you add something, or is there any?
I think really, really briefly, I think I immediately saw that, when I learned about contextual therapy, my mind immediately went to, oh, that's what I saw. Because I think my older sister was heavily parentified, not because she was older, but she was actually second oldest, but because she was a girl, there was also gender expectations. So she was actually the only one who was so parentified, both instrumental wise and also emotionally parentified. And so I was kind of always, I wrote about that a lot in my dissertation. And then the part about, me feeling left alone, it was not a neglect, but it almost felt like that to me when I was actually growing up. I didn't use the word neglect because it wasn't. They had I received a lot of protection and love in their own ways. But if I have to choose a word to describe my experience, it was closer to feeling like having the emotional neglect while growing up. So then it can be maybe another form of parentification, because I had to take care of my own needs, which I don't think is really fair as a young child. So I think that was maybe another form of parentification. So it was really my sister and myself that was kind of thinking about that. And then little later, toward the end of my dissertation, I did also realize that maybe my father also might have been parentified when he was growing up. So I think there was that generational experience as well. So that will be my family involvement when it comes to contextual therapy.
What motivates you to attend that conference? And And how would you encourage others to come to the conference?
So I really do love contextual therapy. So when I heard about the conference, I think it was a couple of years ago, from Tatiana, I got really excited.
Mhm.
So I just told her I really want to go. So it was not about making presentation at all. I told her I just want to go and attend the conference. And then I never been to that part of Europe. So that was another, that's great. That's a part that I also want to go to anyway. So I can do both. I can attend the conference and I can also travel a little bit, right? So that was the motivation initially. But then now that I'm done with my dissertation, I defended my dissertation. It got approved in May, and I'm completely done with the program now. This month, I am done. So now that it's done, I was also thinking that how great it would be if I can share my study and what I found. And it was because it's very, I was very moved by my participants in the study. So I would love to share that and learn from others who have been, studying or using or trying to advance contextual therapy. So that will be my motivation.
I hope we will meet there.
And thank you very much for that. You were so open about your personal life in this person. It's very interesting to hear.